Hello, it's Peter Wright and Kathleen Beauvais with another episode of the Yakking Show Harmony Channel. And this is the channel which is your path to wholeness. And we lead you along that path by bringing you interesting guests to help you thrive and survive in the interesting times we seem to be heading into. Today's guest will be no exception. But first, let's introduce co-host Kathleen. Hi, Kathleen. How are you today?
Oh, I'm doing great, Peter. Thank you for that. And thank you all so very much for tuning into our show. We so appreciate having you. And as Peter mentioned, we do have another special guest with us today. We are so excited to welcome Susan Morrow-Johnson to the show. Hello, Susan. How are you?
Hi, Kathleen. Hi, Peter. I'm very well, thank you.
Now, Susan is a self-help speaker, a trainer, an author, and a psychic medium. If you're searching for your purpose in life and what you should do next, you won't want to miss this episode. So let's just dive right in. Susan, how do you go about helping people find their purpose in life?
Well, I have a system. I have a process that we do. But basically, we start with what I call the elements of your destiny. So we start with your divine connection, your divine value, and moving on through until we figure out all of your talents. And then you get to choose which ones feel the most exciting to you right now. And then you put those to work or to use. And usually it's in service to others. That's not a guilt inducer in any way. It's just that it feels great when you use your talents. And everybody wants to help people. And so then we figure out how you're going to express that and then how to manifest it. So I'm also a manifestation expert. So we work on bringing that to reality in your life.
Oh.
And that's the very, very broad brush way that we do it. But that's why I say if we all used our talents, there would be perfect balance.
Right. Now, you go on to say that when you work with clients, they discover how intuitive they actually are, how to manifest powerfully, and how to meditate like a rock star. Exactly how do you go about doing this? You said you have a process. Can you tell us a little bit more about that process?
Yes, and actually that first thing that I mentioned, the divine connection, that's where we learn meditation. And the thing about meditation is that for many years, all of my clients would say, "Oh, I can't meditate. I just can't make my mind stop, stop the hamster wheel." And the problem that most people have is not having something to focus on. And so when it's really so unfair to tell somebody, "Oh, just close your eyes and breathe and concentrate on your breathing, clear your mind, blah, blah, blah." It's not that easy. It is that simple, but it's not that easy. And so everybody would just say, "I can't do that." And yet the truth is that you just need to know how. So we start with a really simple type of meditation where you just have something to focus on specifically. And then we go from there to a self-hypnosis type of meditation. And I teach them how to do that with guided meditations. And so I'm not a hypnotherapist, but the method that I use is very much like hypnosis. And that brings up how people say, "Oh, I don't think I could be hypnotized." Yes, you can. About 95% of us are suggestible. Any hypnotherapist will tell you that. So yeah, you can do this for yourself. And it's using that process, that meditation, to connect with your guides, with spirit, with whatever you call all that is, and to understand yourself better, and also to get your subconscious to be open to making changes, which it does not like to do. So that's where we start, really, is to do that. And then along the way, about that's the meditation part, but about the intuition part, it really just comes along with the process. We don't really do intuitive exercises, but it comes along as they start just thinking and paying attention and recognizing what's going on. And we talk about how to tune into their guides so that they can get the messages that they need to get.
Right. So oftentimes, people will, and I count myself among them, we will make decisions based on our mind, based on our thoughts, and on an intellectual level, but we won't base the decision on what your heart and what your gut are telling you.
Right.
And oftentimes it becomes the wrong decision. You don't see it right away, but later down the road you see that. Why is it that we can't get out of our own way?
Yeah. Well, it starts at birth. I mean, the way that our society is set up is to look at the logical, to think critically. Nobody concentrates on feeling and being intuitive. And if you happen to be a gifted child, then you may actually get in trouble if you are psychically or spiritually gifted. So our school system is set up, our education system, and I think this is the same in Canada and the UK and so forth. It is really set up for critical thinking and logical thinking. So if you are in elementary school and you can give the right answer in math but you can't show your work, you don't know how you got that answer, then you're either a good guesser or you're cheating. And so this is how our intuition is just squashed out of us. I don't think anybody did that on purpose. I don't think that somebody said, I'm the headmaster of this school and I'm going to keep these children from using their intuition. But it's just the way that we have developed. And so the intuition that we are naturally all born with, and some have more than others, just like any talent. But that natural intuition that we all have, our instincts, our gut feelings, we learn not to use them. We learn to dismiss that. If you get a thought that comes into your mind, like, oh, I should turn here instead of down there, and you just go, oh, it's just my imagination. And then you go down there, and sure enough, there's a wreck, or you have a wreck. If you had turned there, this is what you were talking about, Kathleen. If you had turned when you got that message, that thought, then you would have avoided whatever it is down there. So that is the trick. The trick is to start paying attention and stop dismissing things as your imagination, which is what we've all been taught, what we've all, been told. In fact, from my own experience as a child who I didn't have any idea until I was much older, but I experienced feeling people around me, felt like I was being watched. Faces of strangers popped into my head. You'd hear conversations in white noise, and would get, thoughts and fragments of speech and thinking that would just come to me. And when I told my mother I felt like I was being watched, she said, "Oh, you just have such a good imagination. What a wonderful gift you have, for imagination." So I really grew up kind of thinking that all creative people had these kinds of experiences, including spontaneous out-of-body experiences. And I just thought I was a creative kid. So I was really lucky about that. But it was not, and I mean, I was lucky in terms of not being condemned for it or punished for it.
Right.
But at the same time, it was not nurtured or encouraged. It was not developed. It was not purposely thought of. So that's just the way that we are set up to operate, and we can overcome it. We can remember that. We can bring that back into being, exercise that muscle.
Right. And the other thing I wanted to mention, sorry, Peter, I'm just stepping in here for a moment. It's just
Carry on.
that, oftentimes, even though our gut or our heart tells us to do something, we don't trust it.
Yes.
We think, no, our mind is telling us that's not the right decision. You should do the other, should do the opposite. And because our minds are more critical and probably better at making these decisions than our hearts. And so we don't trust that intuitive side.
Right.
Would
Right.
you-
And that's why what I just described,
Yes.
not trusting it. But what most of us find is that one time that we do trust it, it's real.
Right.
And
Right.
then it's normal also to think, well, that was a fluke. But once you start practicing that and you start paying attention and you realize that, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Oh, that did work. Then you start to become more intuitive, more aware of your intuition. And what I say is that truth with a capital T always makes sense. So you can logic out your intuition against it, usually. And you can also use your intuition to see if the logic part makes sense.
Right.
And so we are all born with intuition and intellect, and we're at our best when we use them both. I would never advise or practice to use only my intuition and none of my thinking brain.
Sure.
that doesn't even make sense. Why would you exclude the other one? Why would you exclude intuition? So you don't want to exclude your ability to cognate, to think critically, and to analyze things. Those are important skills and talents as well.
Right.
So I think that the concept of missing it, and dismissing it is overcome by simply acknowledging that you're doing that and paying attention to those thoughts as they come in.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Peter?
Interesting. Yeah. I just thought I've had a few experiences in my life where the logical and safe thing to do was go this way, but my heart told me to go the other way, and it's led me into some really scary situations. But I'm very glad that I followed my intuition in those respects and not the logic safe route, because it's given me some wonderful experiences all the same. So perhaps I'm a little different to most, that I've always been a bit of a maverick in that respect. What I was going to ask you is, on your website, you talk about people missing out on the 3 Fs. So do you want to explain a little bit more about that to us?
Right. Well, I work a lot with women entrepreneurs.
Sure.
And so the 3 Fs are fulfillment, fun, and funds. Funds meaning money. So if your business is not providing you with the fulfillment, fun, and funds that you so desire, then that's where we start looking at where you're out of alignment with your purpose and where you're out of alignment with your right now destiny. So there's always evidence of your alignment or misalignment, and there's also always evidence of how worthy you feel of being, doing, having what you want, love, and enjoy. So if you look at what's working and what's going well and what you have that you like, those are both signs of aligning with where you're supposed to be or where you intended to be when you came here, and a sign that you feel worthy of being, doing, having those. The opposite is also true. The things that are not working, the doors are slamming, you don't like it, you have lack over here, you do not feel worthy of those things, and you're out of alignment. So those are the things that we work on. So to get the fulfillment, the fun, and the funds, you have to be both in alignment and to feel worthy of being, doing, having.
Right.
Okay. So I'm going to pursue that one, if I may, a little bit.
Sure.
This is one of my pet not peeves. I'm not quite sure what the description is. Something that concerns me about the feminist movement, and I'm not knocking the feminist movement, don't get me wrong. I've had this argument with some very successful women, and I believe, as a male, that many younger women feel compelled to succeed in their own business because of what they read on social media and what successful women tell them. But that's not true of men. Not all men feel compelled to be a CEO or run their own business, right? So it seems to be that we've got a division here. But it's okay for men not to aspire to the very peak, but it's not okay for women. And is that not one of the reasons why some women are unhappy? They feel compelled to succeed in a field that they might not want to succeed in.
Okay, that is an interesting philosophical and political question.
Yeah, sure.
And yes, it certainly in the early days of women's women's liberation movement in the 60s and 70s, a lot of women who took pride in being housewives and raising their families and taking care of their husbands, and these would be middle class nuclear family wives. A lot of them did feel degraded. And they also felt like they were under pressure to become a career woman. And I know that was a struggle. And I believe, now I'm actually a little young, just a little bit young for that. I was born in the 60s. But I believe that, as with any revolutionary movement, you have to start at an extreme. Because it's just kind of like I tell my clients, if you want the moon, shoot for the stars. And if you fall short, you'll still get what you want. So you have to move to the extreme. And so I think that is about the feminist part that you're talking about. Now, if you talk about today's young women feeling the pressure to become successful as a business owner, I don't think that is as prevalent as you seem to think.
Okay.
I think that, yes, there is certainly, social media is, it is the bane of our existence, and yet we enjoy it
Sure.
and we can't get away from it,
Right.
But I think that young people today, and I'm also far removed from them, but I do have daughters in their 30s and I have nieces in their early 20s, and they seem to, um, they just want to do what they want to do. That's really what they seem to be. I don't see a lot of um, them indicating that, oh, I'm under so much pressure to start a business and be successful. I don't see
Okay.
a lot of that.
Oh, that's good.
Women who want to start a business, or who have started businesses, usually have, they want some independence. They want, quote unquote, their own money if they're married. They want to help people in a way that's meaningful to them.
Hmm.
And the money thing and the success thing and the CEO thing is not as important to women overall. I mean, just
Right.
as that is what we would put into the divine masculine category, being
Right.
the top of the heap,
Sure.
And women aren't like that. The divine feminine is much more cooperative than competitive,
Sure. Sure.
and much more um, about leaning into what you're about.
Right.
And that's the thing, is we've come into this new century and the age of Aquarius. We are coming into a reawakening of the divine feminine at long last.
Hmm.
And women are much more about community and cooperation and love, friendship, nurturing, all of that. And it's the way we're built. And so that's where marketing is changing. That's where businesses are
Sure.
changing. And I hope that answers your question.
Yes.
It
I may
does.
have just
Yes.
said that doesn't even make any sense to me, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's where I see it.
So,
No, that's good. That's good to hear.
Right.
That's good to hear, because
Mhm.
from the few cases I've heard about, it was a concern of mine that it was more widespread than the few cases that I've heard about. So you've answered that very nicely. So thank you, Susan.
So,
Thank you.
Susan, I know that you've answered this partly, but how did you discover you had this ability? I think you mentioned that you've known it pretty much your whole life, but what led you to make this an actual career to help others uncover their purpose?
Well, okay, I'll try to give you the short version. So I started wondering in my early 30s if I had a job, I had a career, I was good at it, I was manager, I had staff, I enjoyed the work and I was good at it. But I was asking, excuse me, I felt the tug of fate. Are these the talents that I'm meant to share with the world? Are these the ones that I'm supposed to use in service to others? And you can find where you are serving in any job. You absolutely can. And I can sometimes help people with that too. But for me, I went through not only just my own philosophical musings and searching and soul searching and all of that, but also things happened along the way. So I was laid off from that job.
Mm.
And after a short few months, I woke up one morning going, oh, this is what I'm going to do. And I took that job and I became a consultant and contractor doing those same things. I loved it. It was great. And then that ended. So I got kicked out again. And so I was kind of pushed, now we can talk about whether that was my guides, the universe, the all that is pushing me, or if that was me from my soul level, if it was me just thinking and wondering. And so then law of attraction brought people into my life to answer my
Right.
questions. And of course, it doesn't really matter what it was because it's all the same thing anyway. So eventually, I met a lot of people who were very woo, who were very into the metaphysical of all kinds. And, somebody introduced me to Abraham Hicks, and somebody else was an astrologer, and, somebody else did Reiki. And then I joined this networking group that had a lot of people like that, and started noticing that, oh, okay, yeah, that's what that is. And eventually realized that, yes, I could visualize the chakras and I understood what that meant. And I'm a medical intuitive and so forth. And so I hung out my shingle actually doing energy readings. And so I would talk to the client about her chakras and what they looked like to me and what that meant to her, past, present, and future. And so one of my first energy readings, in the pre-reading meditation, I had an image pop into my head that happened to relate to the client's late mother. And then she started talking about her grandmother. And I saw this woman so clearly in my mind's eye, and described her. And she wasn't a typical grandma, believe me. Described her. She's like, "Oh, yeah, that's my grandma." I was like, oh, well, okay. And that's when it clicked. It was like, oh, these strangers' faces, and the feeling that I'm being watched, and that I'm surrounded by people I don't know are there. And these were people who were coming to me because they knew that I was sensitive to them and wanted me to help them communicate with their living loved ones. And so that's when I said, oh, I'm really a psychic medium. And that's what I do. So it was really fun. I was must have been a little over 40 by the time I figured it out. And it's been a real evolution ever since then.
Wow.
To
Good for
bring
you.
me to
My
this point.
goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Susan, you're also a medical intuitive. So how does
Yes.
that work, and how successful has that been?
I don't do much of it, but a medical intuitive is sort of like a human X-ray machine, bringing in both the physical and the spiritual aspects of injury and illness. And
Okay.
so Caroline Myss, Myss, you may have heard of her, she's the one I learned about that from, more or less. I'd heard about it, but I read Anatomy of the Spirit. And that's where I really learned about medical intuition. And so for me, I can look with my mind's eye at your energy and your energy. People call it your energy body. I don't really like that. But so what's going on with you? And I can look at you physically. And so I might see a solid white, to me, is scar tissue. Misty white is pain. Red is inflammation. Black is serious illness, like life-threatening illness. Yellow is minor illness. Brown is intermediate illness. And then, so I look at illnesses and injuries and what parts of the body they affect. And that's where the chakra information comes in, because let's say that you broke your leg. Okay, so then I'm going to look at the root chakra information about that, the things that it pertains to, and why that injury came to you, because the idea is to get the message. And when spirit is giving you messages, bombarding you with stuff, and you are just not paying attention, like we talked about, paying attention, or you are not doing what you're supposed to do, then the body is sort of the last resort, the physical body. So that's where you get illness and injury. And a very simple example is to say, when you've got a cold, the message is usually to go lie down. You just need to take a load off and take a break and get some rest. That's really simple. It gets more complicated if you broke your leg, or if you have cancer or something like that. But there's always a message, and it's unique to that person. We talk about, well, okay, this is on the right side of your body. What's your relationship with your father like? Okay, and it's in your lungs, so it's about love, and whatever that is. So that I take those pieces and put it all together, and then I can help them to determine the message so that they can heal faster and better.
Right.
Wow. Amazing.
Well, we're running short of time here, but I still have a few other questions I really want to.
Okay, I'll try to answer faster.
One of them was, I experienced many synchronistic events in 2010. That was such a pivotal year. It would blow your mind, some of the stuff I could tell you. But comparatively few these days. Have I become out of touch with my intuitive side? Have I regressed a little bit from where I was back then? Is that possible?
No, it's not. No, not at all. It probably means a couple of things. In 2010, there was more information for you to receive via that vehicle. So synchronicity often means you're on the right track. But also, I always say, ask what's the message? Because again, it's all about the messages you're receiving and acting on them. So what's the message in this event of synchronicity? The other part of your question about, have you regressed? or devolved.
Mhm.
No, you haven't. Probably what happened is that you got used to it. You just got used to it. And your brain recognizes patterns. And so
Right.
that's why we notice synchronicity. That's why we see 11:11 and 12:34 on the clock and so forth.
11:11.
Yeah, everybody loves 11:11. But your brain just it you notice it and you're like, oh, that's kind of cool, 11:11. And so the next time you know what time it is in your head, back of your brain, your subconscious knows what time it is. And so then you look at the clock again and, oh, that's exciting. Now, that's not to take away from anybody that they love to see their angel numbers, right? I have mine too. And so what I tell people is that if it means something to you, it means something to you. Just because your brain is made to recognize patterns and to bring you back to things that get your attention over and over, it doesn't mean that it's not significant for you. It doesn't mean that it doesn't have a message for you. It just means that everything works together, right? And so I think that's probably what it was. You just got used to it and it wasn't necessary for you anymore.
Oh, interesting. Thank you for that.
Mm.
I was hoping you would say something like that. Thank you.
Yeah, but I'm going to throw a little bit in there as well, that
Mhm.
between us, we still have a lot of synchronicity. Kathleen and I have known one another for
True.
going on and worked together for going on 10 years.
Yeah.
And the number of times that Kathleen will send me a message on Slack as I'm typing a message to her about, have you got time to get on Zoom? It's uncanny how often that happens.
That's true.
Mhm.
And the most glaring example is we each bought the other the identical Christmas present this year. The same
love it.
bottle of wine. We'd been talking about that particular wine, and without any further conversation, we handed over the same presents to one.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I
How's
love
that?
that.
How's that?
That's wonderful. I wouldn't necessarily call that synchronicity. I think that's just the two of you being soul friends
Right.
and connected on such a level that you do those things. It's more of an intuitive thing than
Sure.
synchronicity.
Okay.
That's what
So
I would say.
here's one for you that I had a very clear and dramatic experience of déjà vu many, many years ago, probably 40 years ago, 45 years ago. I was in the African bush. I was in the military. I was on patrol, and I was going around a small rocky outcrop. And I knew what I was going to see when I got round the corner. I knew every tree, the view of the grass, the animal tracks. It was in a wild game area. Was startling, like someone had put a picture up in front of me. And sure enough, when I walked around that, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up and I broke into a sweat because there was the picture. It's never happened again. How do you explain that?
Well, that's a great question. There is something in quantum physics called the many worlds interpretation.
Okay.
And it means that everything's actually going on all at the same time. And so
Yes.
déjà vu like that has been attributed sometimes to that, where you
Right.
jump in momentarily into another part of another you in another space and time and dimension, right?
Right.
So that's
Yeah.
probably I would point to. And just because I like being a know-it-all, but other than that, I
No,
honestly
that
have to say,
could
other than
be.
that, I don't know.
I don't know. It's stuck with me. As I say, it's stuck with me for 45 years. It was so clear. Here's another. We've got a couple of minutes. I'm going to jump in, if I may, Kathleen, with another very quick one. I was good at maths at school. Not so good at algebra, but normal maths I was pretty good. Mental arithmetic, because of the age I am, we did a lot of before calculators. So I can often look at a simple maths problem like a multiplication or a division or even a list of numbers, and know the answer before I've worked it out. And I amaze my kids and my wife that I can look at something. She says, well, how do you work this out? And I say, well, that's the answer. How do you work it out? I said, I don't know, but I'll try and work it out, but that's the answer. And it happens a lot. So what is that?
That's kind of funny. That's the example exactly that I gave earlier.
Yeah.
In your case, and maybe you are a maths intuitive. We'll have to make a new category for you. Clear mathematics. But I suspect that it's, again, like your brain recognizes patterns.
Right.
Once you learn to count and to tell time, that's always in your head. Now,
Okay.
I used to consciously count the stairs in my house, when I would go up and down. It was almost a compulsion. But I suspect that you did it enough that your brain's calculator just functions really quickly.
Really quickly.
The rest of us, we have to sit and go, okay, so 5 and 5 is 10 plus 3 is 13, carry the 1. You're just going through it like that. That's my guess. But it could be that you have a special
Could well
gift.
Mm.
Yeah. Because you can
I don't
still
know.
do the
I don't
work.
know.
You can show the work, right? You can write, you can do long
Yeah.
division and write it down. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, I can do it. But often, as long as it's not too complicated, I will just look at it, and before even thinking how to do it, I've got the answer.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah. A lot of,
anyway.
actually, that's not unusual in people who do a lot of math, like accounting or, mostly accounting. People who add figures all the time, it just becomes very second nature to them.
Right.
So that may
okay.
be. I don't know. Did you ever have work to do that was around that?
Well, again, my age, I did a lot of I did accounting work, and I did lots of mathematical work before the days of calculators and before computers. So mental arithmetic was and I was educated in pounds, shillings, and pence. That was the system. So that's a lot more complicated than a decimal system to add up
It is,
costs and that.
yes.
So I was
is.
brought up with that ability.
Yeah, I
I'm
think
taking
that
up.
maybe you just have a natural intellectual talent for math.
Oh, thank you. Oh, that's something that I've got a talent for anyway.
So Susan,
Kathleen,
just tell us about your services that you provide and the coaching course.
Okay, great. So I offer workshops that are the Choose Your Destiny workshops. And I also work one-on-one with coaching clients to go through the process. And I also have a workshop about manifestation. So that's a big one. And then I still do some psychic readings, and I guest on podcasts, and I do speaking gigs, and I'm working on developing my own seminars where, it'll be sort of like where Brene Brown meets, or if Brene Brown and Esther Hicks had a baby.
Oh, wow.
That would be me. So it'll be part lecture, part interaction, and discussion and so forth. And so that's something that's coming up this year. I'm looking forward to that.
Oh,
okay.
Great.
Good. Here's a quick one, and this is a tongue-in-cheek question for you. Your website tells you mainly that you work with women. So I got to ask you, is this because you think men are beyond help or not?
Yes. No, I'm kidding. Of course I'm kidding. No, it's just that's who I have always attracted. The people who want to work with me are women. And
Right.
so, and I niche it down further than that, but yeah, I mostly work with women. That's not to say I've never worked with any men. I certainly have. But that's just how it works out. So, in marketing, we all have to talk about who we work with. And so,
of course, that's right.
But no man should feel like, oh, I can't work with her. She only works with women. No, I'll talk to them.
Now, to be clear, you work with people from all over the world, correct?
Yes. Yeah. The advent of Zoom and previously Skype has just been phenomenal. So when I've had clients all over the world, I mean, Singapore, Australia, all over the UK. One was in Sweden, maybe. So, and Canada. So it's been wonderful to be able to do that, because used to be limited to the phone, and that was a little tricky for long distance.
So Susan, how do people contact you?
It's very simple. Just go to mojomedium.com. Very, very simple. And there's a contact page there. You can also, if you can remember Mojo Medium, you can also email me at mojomedium@gmail.com. And that's probably the easiest, most direct way.
Okay. And for our audio listeners, those details will be in the description on whatever platform you're listening to this on. So I'm just going to finish my side off very quickly with thank you very much to Susan. I really enjoyed that. And gratifying to hear your comments on young women not feeling pressured, because that was a concern of mine. So I'm very pleased to hear what you said about that. And a reminder to our audience, you've seen and heard another really good guest today. To make sure you don't miss out on our future guests, sign up for our newsletter, go to theyakkingshow.com. You'll find a form on the front page. We only send you one email a week, but we'll tell you who's on this week and who's coming next week. From me, thanks again, Susan. Goodbye. Thank you for listening, and back
Thank
to
you.
Kathleen.
Yes, thank you so much for being with us today, Susan. That was really enlightening. And thank you all
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Thank you all once again for tuning into our show. If anyone is interested in being a guest on our show, we invite you to visit us at theyakkingshow.com. All you need to do is click on the contacts tab, where you will find a short application form, and we would love to hear from you. So until next time, take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.